My name's Eric Knight. I'm the Executive Dean of Macquarie Business School, and I'm delighted to invite Preeti to come speak to us and our students. Preeti, maybe to start at a personal level, can you say a little bit about how you came to Macquarie and, the kind of education you did as an undergraduate and in your master's programs?
Yeah, sure. So Eric, it's a bit of a long journey because I actually arrived in Australia in 1998. I came to Melbourne and I came actually as a student. So
Great.
Skills brought me to Australia and the university system brought me to Australia. I think that's kind of like the first point of reflection. I graduated with my MBA and I actually majored in corporate finance. I always had a leaning because my undergrad was in economics and political science. And I just felt like, the numbers always told me a story. And they meant a lot to me because they were tangible. And as I graduated and started to sort of do work in organizations and built my leadership experience, kind of 10 years into it, I was having a coffee actually at the Rocks with one of my mentors. He was at the time had just come out of being partner for Arthur Andersen when actually it used to exist. And he was chatting with me and he said to me, listen, you're at this sort of pivotal point. You should really think about what will hold you in good stead. Talking to shareholders, investors, and board members down the track, if you really want to have a meaningful conversation about what's in fact happening in an organization. And he said to me, have you thought about applied finance? And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm so old now. And that's how the journey started. And I looked for some of the finest programs and Macquarie turned up and I enrolled and you approved me. So that's,
So, can you say something about the program and what you got out of it and what was
Sure.
interesting? What was the insight?
Yeah. So, look, I did my Master's of Applied Finance with Macquarie. First and foremost, what I would say is that I did it as a matured business leader. So I was already running large profit and loss, like scale organizations. And I was going back to school. So it really had to be meaningful, and it was. The word applied really meant a lot to me in coming to that degree because it was applied learning and applied skills. The content was great. The instructors were actually practitioners in the field. So there were some great people from Dan Daggard, Elizabeth Sheedy, and I still remember them, when we did investment portfolio. It was real stuff. I think there were people from Dixon Advisory teaching us at the time, no matter what has happened today. But nevertheless, there were practitioners in the room who were sharing their perspective, and the cohort was quite matured as well. All my sort of students who were with us, we were all sort of mostly matured students. So the interesting discussions we were having were from real world problems and being applied back into the course content. So it was just that next level of insight you get when you're doing corporate financial strategy, when you've actually been doing it with a P&L and balance sheet and it's real. And your cohort is a quant from Westpac and the other cohort person is actually a business analyst on the trading floor. It just starts to make a lot more sense. And, it sort of builds that diversity of thought.
So can you say something about how, having completed that program at Macquarie, you changed the way you did your work or the way you approached your career?
Yeah, actually, it was around 2015. It took me the longest time to get through this degree. I have to say, it is tough, by the way. It's not an easy degree to do. So, I started in 2013 with a full workload, so it took me a while. So it was sort of slow. So thanks for accommodating that too. And I saw something shift in me, and that was around sort of early, like late 2015, early 2016. I was sent a pack on a possible company, and they said, somebody said to me, have a look at it. And very immediately my mind went to, could I estimate the value of this business? And I kind of just opened the deck and started looking at it and did a free cash flow, brought it back to what I thought the value could be, looked at some of the business risks, worked in IRR, compared it to the IRR thresholds of the company and wrote an email to everybody saying, here's what I think it might be. So before we get into a discussion, these are the parameters of how this business looks like based on my assessment just in the last 4 hours. And it just created such a strong conversation in the company. And it's also, I was applying my skills. I was using it for the valuable contribution to the company. The discussions were far more meaningful. And then everyone was going, oh, but what about this? What about the fact that this business may be commoditized? What about the fact that it might be digitized? What if this happens? But suddenly it gives this very tangible valuation number. And the conversation becomes way more focused about, is it value accretive or not? And gives you center stage at that conversation.
So can you say something about then the skills and attributes that are involved in the day after that conversation? Where do you sort of then take the insight and then take it into leadership of an organisation?
Yeah, so look, number one thing that happens is that when you can have that conversation, which is balanced, numeric, has some business insight into it, the business will recognize it. In most cases, the business will recognize it. The same thing happened to me. And as it got more and more recognized, I was given more and more responsibility. Good news, my work increased, which was fantastic. So, I had a commercial transformation portfolio. So I really started to enjoy looking at where can we actually drive margins, profitability, transitions out of and make a meaningful impact. I wasn't always successful, but it certainly engendered a degree of confidence into me. That was step one. Step two is, of course, just because you know your numbers, that doesn't do away with the paraphernalia of soft skills that you must have to work with people, because that's just super important. Step three, the business got to a point where they were like, okay, we want to set up a disruptive business, and we need someone who can kind of think about that as a venture company. And I was chosen. And I feel like that the understanding of finance and then being able to graduate into what a venture financing model could look like for a portfolio company that you set up and how you actually look at that also made a difference to my selection.
Very interesting.
And then I went to Silicon Valley.
So talk me about the journey from there and then how that led you eventually into Adecco.
All right. So, look, I'll fast forward it. I went to the US. The company was invested into by the venture arm of Schneider's. And I was, in fact, happy doing that. And one day, effectively, the phone rang, and the Adecco group was looking for their next CEO, as they had come to this intersection of having a organization which had three business lines. One is, of course, the Adecco brand, which is a workforce solutions brand. They had a technology brand now, and which was Modis. And then we had Talent Solutions, who are affiliate companies, General Assembly, Spring, and we have a couple of other digital companies in it as well. So to cut a long story short, here was an organization looking at, we want a new, fresh pair of hands, if you like, for leadership. We want someone who's perhaps bringing a sense of, a deeper sense of bringing large-scale companies together and bringing value to the forefront. And I don't know, they chose me.
So can you talk me through your sort of first day as group CEO and maybe the period thereafter? Your first impressions, but also, what did you learn as you sort of took on the reins of leadership there? Yeah,
so it was during COVID, Eric. So, it didn't feel like I took over anything except for a Teams meeting. So that was quite interesting. It was almost like, so just to put it in perspective, I couldn't meet anyone. I had met everybody digitally. And, one day we opened a team meeting and we announced to the entire organization that there is a new leader in the business. So it was, I had to use a whole lot of ability to communicate and really digitally animate my persona and my personality to hopefully create some connection. I have a saying that in the 21st century, as thanks to COVID, all the CEOs are now TV producers as well as very good presenters. So that's how it felt, really. But, the group was very welcoming, so that made it easier. But I have to say, my training is such that the first thing I was in preparation for it was like, I want to look at the numbers. I want to look at how the business is really doing, because very early in my career, I was taught that numbers tell you a story. They paint the best picture of what's happening and what potentially can happen.
And can you share a bit of that story and also what it might say about the kind of market for jobs and the future of work and where those things are heading?
Well, look, Ala, it's a tipping point, I feel. So there are the mega trends of technology is 3 to 5 times more amplified, actually, thanks to what's happened with COVID. So we are seeing an increased spend in digital transformation, increased spend in adoption of, say, robotic process automation and artificial intelligence. That is moving at pace. And along with that is moving at pace this desire, of course, to still have to do the basics of, you still have to have a pick and pack happening. You still need to have, people serving in hospitality areas. You still have these people skills which are required, and people have to still do those jobs. Then we have this massive skills shortage. So we're seeing this sort of trifactor storm of there is a fast-growing economy, thanks to, of course, the latest budget drop in Australia particularly. We have massive desire to grow infrastructure. We have pressure on academia to produce that talent. You would be experiencing that too. We cannot produce all of that fast enough onshore. And the conversation that we are seeing at Future at Work is, is at the intersect of, what does it look like to manufacture skills in Australia now to fulfill these shortages? What does transferability of skills look like? So, just because somebody has been in hospitality, I always now start to say that if you're looking for a customer success person, say in a software company, hospitality has been a great pool of people who've actually been trained in customer service skills. All we have to do is retrain them in the art of technology. So this transferability has to be increased in order to address the skills shortage. When we think about a future at work, when we imagine it in 2030, we do imagine it with a very digitally literate sort of population, particularly for the OECD countries. We still also imagine that there is higher mobility of workforce between sectors. We also imagine that the nature of relationship perhaps might change. I mean, we are seeing that people want more flexibility at work. That may translate into employment contracts as well. Already freelance markets in IT are super big. I don't know if you use Airtasker or not. The gig economy is a reality. We see that continuing. Maybe that will actually get regulated by then. I don't know. So I think we are at a transformative moment. And at I call it the 3T transformation, the intersect of talent, technology, and transformation.
Flipping this around the other way, imagining that I'm a job seeker, or I'm a student who's looking to enter the employment world, how do they interface with your products and services? What would that experience be? And a kind of, one day they decide they want to enter a new job or change the work they do. What would that look like in terms of involving themselves in an Adecco's service or a service provided through Adecco?
Yeah, sure. I think we are we are very open in terms of if we do our own graduate programs and we do take intakes and so on and so forth. But the more important thing is, obviously, there is a web platform. So you can go to the Adecco group or a local website and you can apply as a candidate based on what are you really looking for. So if you're looking for flexible work, actually we have a Adecco assistant which comes up and talks to you about what are you really looking for? Would you like to receive messages for possible pool of work, especially if you're looking for flexible work. The other piece is if you're looking for technology specific work, you would actually interface more with, say, Modis. You would come to us, you talk to us same way. Usually it's these days via website or by some kind of a digital assistant on a website. You'd send your resume in. I have to say, though, that it's becoming more and more about the skills that you have rather than the paraphernalia of it's not just about the degree, it's about demonstrating applied learning. That's kind of important. The other piece is, of course, there are people who are coming to us and saying, we are looking for this type of graduate. So we are matching that. That's what we do as an organization best, is we've got people who are coming to us with their requirements, be it in technology, be it in broader skill sets. And then we are matching that pool of, I suppose, skill sets with a graduate cohort or otherwise who are looking for work.
And can you say something about how that match works best, in a sense of, what are the traits or characteristics that employers are looking for that actually land a person who has those traits into a job?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I think this is an evolutionary topic these days with employers because it's all sort of changing a little bit. But let's obviously, I think I'm going to say that there is traditionally, of course, there is that deep domain knowledge that is required for, if you're going to be a network engineer, then you should at least be able to do the basics of network engineering or have some formal qualifications that allow you to do that. But what broadly, if you were looking at broader sort of sets of product management or say cybersecurity, or you were looking for information security or consulting professionals or broadly digital transformation, I think at the moment there is a maturing conversation about being open about, those skill sets. Well-rounded is a word which is used a lot. Well-rounded, capable of learning fast. Agile is like the most popular word of the 21st century. Everyone's agile these days. I think what that really means is people who can comprehend a complex problem, feel okay with it, and move fast at pace to solve it. That's what I feel it really means. We don't always say it that way. A growth mindset is the other one. Capacity to learn new things because things are evolving so fast. These are some of the attributes, if you like. Skills, I think, are very specific to the role and the industry sometimes, and we can get carried away on skills. The good news is that we are having this transitionary conversation from jobs to skills. Otherwise, it used to be, I'm looking for a business analyst. And then everyone starts to go, let's look for how many business analysts are on the database. But if you actually have a skills conversation, you say, I need someone who can look at data, produce insights, correlate macroeconomic environment to what my micro is telling me, and produce some recommendations for the business. That would open up, say, a business graduate with good analytic skills, right? Yeah. As opposed to a BA who's maybe, say, has deep actuarial skills. Does that make sense?
So can you say a bit more about then how talent search is evolving? So, maybe I have in mind the traditional idea of, a campus university, and you have the jobs fair and people come along and they have their CV and you have a good conversation. How is the process of talent search evolving, with technology or with the more sophisticated needs of companies?
I think campus fairs still have a role to play, so you can have them, right? Like there's nothing wrong with a campus fair. But I think talent search is evolving. So for example, when I've run some tech companies, one of the places where you scouted a lot for talent was meetups. You actually don't go to the campus, you go to meetups. You go to hackathons. Hackathons like the most widely, sort of rich ground to look for because it's kind of like an applied format of demonstrating your skills. So then you go, I really like that. So I think active talent initiation in formats which are learning formats is becoming more and more popular. It's not formalized, but it definitely in technology it's becoming popular. There's Cocoa Heads, which is a group in Sydney, which is actually, I think it's sponsored by Apple. And, all these Apple programmers and in different languages, in Swift UI and React Native, they all come together to talk about things. They share learnings. And they actually, I was amazed. I went to one, they do this hire and fire shout out. Right. And so you just and that's how I hired a few people for my team in Clipsal Solar. I just got on, literally there's a little, sort of a stool sort of thing, a bench, and I got up and said, hi, my name is Preeti. I'm the CEO of Clipsal Solar. If you're passionate about clean energy and technology and making a difference in the world, you must come and join us. We're building home energy services software. And the people who want to work for purpose turn up and talk to you. It's not, you have to actually, let me put it this way, the employer has to make themselves far more attractive, appear nimble depending upon the type of skill sets that you're actually attracting, and then be interesting and aligned on shared values with candidates. We are seeing more and more of that.
And is that changing from something that was different before, or is it the process? The same attributes have always been there, but the process of catching them is different. What's the change been from and toward?
Now I'm showing my age. Oh, look, I think it was absolutely, and some of those channels still exist and they're very valid. It always used to be you went and you got a job through either a specialized headhunter or you got a job through a particular sort of job seeking or job matching website. I think there are many more platforms and many more types of roles people are open to doing. People are career transitioning a lot more. People might say, oh, I got to 40 and I don't want to be in customer success anymore. I suddenly want to become a software programmer. That's becoming acceptable. At General Assembly, that's what we do. For 12 weeks, you can do an immersive software programming course, and then we put you into a talent pipeline to be placed as a software programmer. Completely acceptable. So I think there are more avenues, probably. The from evolution is there was very structured, linear, this is how you go and get a job, to now there's a matrix of options by how you can get work.
So if you look now out into the next 10, 20 years, can you extend some of these themes and say something about what you think they mean for our labour economy, for people seeking work and for companies seeking talent?
Can I see out 10 years? I don't know. But here's, this is obviously not absolute. Lots can happen in 10 years, if anything last year has taught us. But what I will say is this. I think the continuum of lifelong learning is here to stay. It isn't enough that you graduated and that's the end of that. I think you graduate and your skills upgrade process will be a lifelong process. You could call it your, digital passport for skills. I see something to that effect coming into play. I also think that we will make a shift from 8 hours, or my manuscript said I was an honor student, and that's actually not the end. It's simply a point in time. The end is actually employability and success. So becoming more outcomes based around that, and that's going to be more and more. I also see relationship between employer and employee transforming a lot more. We are seeing some new models come out, but I cannot be absolute on it, but certainly, I wouldn't rule out the realm of your comfort of working at the human-machine interface being a real attribute at some point.
And can you say something, you've obviously had an international career, in Australia, but also internationally in the States and in the region. Can you say something about the evolving nature of the geographical workplace in Australia? And I think about this in the context of, net demand for jobs probably sits beyond Australia and in the region. So how are we going to participate in a global economy, as a result of technology, as post-COVID with remote work? Is there something playing out of the kind of borderless world of
Yeah,
work?
so I'm going to put out something. I'm going to put out a thought bubble there, Eric, for you. I always in Australia, we always talk about, the net demand for jobs is outside of Australia. I want to ask the question, why? Because, we are a highly, highly educated nation and have the capacity to invest in high-value industries. So we should actually be taking this very moment. I feel like there is a moment here in Australia where we can take a chance and actually create some very high-value industries and create more jobs in the innovation economy. There should be no reason as to why we don't have that proposition other than the will to do so. But having said that, where we are today, you're right. On the basis of where we are today, there is a lot of growth expected in Asia. There is still a lot of growth expected in the US. The net demand for jobs, look, by all accounts of what we can see, will come from Asia, closer to our region. I think we as a nation have a very pivotal role to participate and contribute to that. We are privileged enough, and we have this opportune moment. We have the trifactor of good capital systems, good education system, relatively, ability to invest in skills. So the only question is, what is that relationship of skills export and knowledge export we want to create with the rest of the region? I'm sure someone in DFAT is more well-versed at working the exact answer to this. But what I do is I learn from Singapore a lot, small country, but they're so focused on the manufacturing of skills. Like, so for example, education should not actually be an expense. It perhaps should be an investment, considered an investment in the books of the employers. Should be a tax deductible item for at a very aggressive rate so that people are encouraged to actually transition skills more rapidly rather than a slower system. So there is opportunities to really propel that investment paradigm. Why is it that we don't have a financial product that actually says that if you put, say, a cohort of disadvantaged people, or for that matter, cohort of any people, into courses which were going to produce high-value skills for them, then the government can actually predict the tax offset that comes as a result of that upfront investment. Why don't we have a financial product that does that?
So where do you think the conversation should be had or needs to go? Or, who are the kind of influences that can help shape that? I mean, perhaps you and our organisations both, but how do we begin to create a cluster here?
Yeah, I think the cluster is, I think there are three pillars here. The industry, and I'll class us, say, we're all industry participants. I think government, and then I think the individuals themselves. Because it's got to answer the question of, because it changes something here. And we can all write whatever policies we like, in closed boardrooms, and they look fantastic. But if they don't actually change lives and outcomes, and we don't create that effect of an easy to skill up road, and that's where I think government comes into play. Make it as easy as possible. Industry comes in play to be open-minded and grab those skills and create that impetus in the economy. And the individual is. It's incumbent upon them to take an interest in it and actually go do that thing. If all the tools are available, whatever that thing for you is, hopefully it's applied finance in your case for most of the students,
Final question for you, Preeti. You're about to meet some of Macquarie Business School's most talented students as part of the Dean's Excellence Award, and thank you for participating in this. And given all the things that you can see and know and that we've talked about, can you share some advice that you would offer some of those individuals, some of our students going into this economy, so that they can prepare themselves and be relevant for the jobs and the world that they face?
I think the first thing is be open to adapting your learning to actual application, and do it fast. Pace matters in the 21st century. The graduate world is over. When you're in the real world, people do care about outcomes a lot more, and it's actually usually a little bit more difficult to prove outcomes compared to a university assignment. It's not impossible because they're all talented students, so I'm sure they'll make it work. So shift from my score to my outcome is one I would say. The second piece I would say is don't stop learning. Create strong associations with your alumni, with your university, and continue to see if you can come back and upgrade that one more thing if that's interesting and relevant to where you are wanting to go. Don't lock yourself into anything either. Just because you start a career as a business analyst doesn't mean that you will end your journey, as a chartered financial analyst in a bank only. There is way much more transferability these days, and I think it will only increase. So finally, I'd just say, take a few chances while you're at it. You're young, what you got to lose? Take a few different chances. Don't stick to the age-old stuff. Try and do different new things. Go try an industry that you've been thinking about, and always thought, maybe I can. Go open a company if that's what you wanted to do. If you are a business graduate, by all means, do that. Do that now. Lose little money if you can. And you will find that those applied skills will actually hold you in good stead.
Preeti, can you say something about why you've decided to come back and make a contribution here as one of our alumni?
I think this relationship is a lifelong relationship. And also, I wanted to personally tell you that I want to do a behavioral economics and artificial intelligence course, which you need to open up. So that's why I've come. But look, on a more serious point, I'm true to the idea of lifelong learning. It doesn't stop. In fact, the first degree or the graduation is actually the day the relationship is cemented. And then it is that trusted party you can keep going back to grow your skills. It's the trusted party where you have your network of friends, and it's always nice to come back and see them if you have the time to do so. And also, I think giving back and sharing those experiences candidly with the cohort of students that perhaps are coming through it. In life, it's nice to be able to do that, and also for particularly young students to be able to see what are the possibilities in examples of past graduates. It's such a great platform. I really feel the alumni piece can be even more vibrant than what it is. Unfortunately, I'm a very time poor person, but I would happily come back to more alumni events.
Preeti, I know you're a great, passionate advocate for education. It's a real privilege to have you as one of the alumni of Macquarie Business School. Thank you for spending time with us, and thank you for being here tonight with Macquarie Business School.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah.